Hi, and welcome to a slightly different take of what's in my bag. In this, I'll be covering two key aspects. The first one is the equipment you need to start off on your photographic journey, the kind of equipment that you can purchase right off the bat, and then the second thing is how do you grow your equipment as you become a more advanced photographer, the kind of equipment to grow, and a recommendation as to how to take this forward without wasting money. So this is my tips and advice. This is how I have built up my equipment over the last few years to the state that I've got it in today, which I totally love. Also, check out some of my other videos. I've done a camera review bag, I've done a quick insight into the lenses that I'm using, and I'll be doing more on the camera bodies and the filters, etc. as I go forward. So please remember to like, subscribe, and without further ado, let's crack on with the main purpose of the video, which is let's first look at the equipment that you need to start off with. So now let's take a look at what you should begin with. So as a beginner photographer, getting the right equipment is essential. So this is the camera body that I currently use. This is a Canon 90D. Prior to this, I started off with a Canon 250D, then had a 600D, and I now have the Canon 90D. I'll be doing a full my thoughts on the Canon 90D video very shortly. But in terms of the actual camera, this kind of DSLR mirrorless is the kind of body that you can start with. So start maybe at the 250, 600. Obviously, I'm talking about the Canon range here, and progress up onto the 90D. Obviously, you can look at Sony, Olympus, Nikon, etc. Fujifilm. There's some great cameras out there, so do your research. So this is a APS-C sensor DSLR, 32 megapixels or 32.5. Don't get carried away by the megapixels. I know there's a race, an arms race almost, to get to the maximum megapixels. If you're thinking about an upgrade, then the 90D is a perfect one if you've already got a Canon. If you've already got like 250 or whatever you may already have. The 90D is a brilliant upgrade at the moment. The advantage of this is the lens compatibility. So when considering your first camera, make sure that the lenses can go with it. So I'm still using the lens here that I started with. This is the 18-135, a little bit more about the lens in a minute. Starter kit that I use with on the 250, I'm still using that same mid-range telephoto zoom lens, which is perfect because the lenses can upgrade with the bodies. They're compatible with the bodies that I've upgraded to. So that's absolutely perfect, and consider that when purchasing your first camera. If you're upgrading, the 90D, if you're in a Canon world, is an absolutely brilliant upgrade if you've got, say, the 600 or the 250. Again, that's something to consider in the range that you may have or the brand that you may have, whether that be Sony, Nikon, etc. So that's where I would start. I would start with a good camera body. Keep it within budget because the lens is absolutely critical as well. Don't get a great body and a cheap lens. Balance the effect of those two off so that you get a good body, a good lens within your budget. That's absolutely vital to start. And now we'll start to take a look at what equipment you need as you go forward. And now let's talk about the first lens that you need. I started with this Canon 18-135 on my bodies. This is a great zoom lens. At the 18mm zoom lens, gives me a great wide angle. It's an absolutely ideal starter for landscape photography, giving me a wide angle to capture landscapes. The other thing that it's got at the 135 end is a great zoom. So actually I can start to get a little bit of reach with that. It's not a full telephoto lens in terms of, say, some of the bigger lenses, and I'll talk about that in a second, but it gives you great reach. So this kind of body, this kind of range lens is the perfect starter kit. So this is a perfect combination of a good body, a good lens, well balanced, and giving me, as the starter point, a great range for both wide angle and giving me a little bit of reach. So now let's take a little look at some of the equipment you may want as you're building up your photographic equipment. So let's just pop this down here just for 1 second. It's nice and safe there. The next thing you may consider getting is a tripod. I use this K&F. I do quite a lot of hiking for my landscape photography. So there's key aspects of a tripod to consider. One is, if you're going to be going and doing a lot of hiking, get something that's lightweight but still sturdy. You need a good combination. There are heavier, sturdier tripods available than this, but actually for hiking, this is absolutely brilliant. The other advantage of this is you can detach this leg and use it as a monopod. So also then consider what kind of head you want to mount the camera. You need the new Swiss Arca attachment. The bore LED is brilliant, just rotate around. You can then put it into portrait mode really quickly from landscape mode. You get great flexibility, and just make sure that the legs are nice and sturdy, quick release, just to release them and drop them out. This gives you full flexibility, so that's worth considering as a tripod. But I would go from, once you've got your good camera body and your lens, first thing I would consider then is a tripod. Let's put that down here, out of the way. The next thing that I would consider is a bag. Now, I've got this bag which is perfect for all my equipment, and you'll see what I've got in just 1 second. But I will also recommend, if you're starting out, get a smaller bag, maybe just a hip bag, maybe just something that's easier to carry. Don't necessarily have to get a camera related bag, so consider that as well. But definitely get a bag to protect your equipment. This one is an ideal bag because you can get it onto flights, it carries all my equipment, it's not too heavy, super lightweight. So an ideal bag to consider. So next, let's talk a little bit about which lenses you may then want to go into. So I'm going to talk about lenses, and then I'll talk about equipment like filters, etc., etc. So let's do those actual filters. So the filters that you next need to consider. You've got a choice now. You've got that's the wrong one. You have a choice now. You have the wide angle, which is a traditional landscape photography approach, or you have a telephoto lens. I would consider what kind of photography you want to take. If it's primarily wide angle landscape style photography, get yourself this. This is the Canon 10-18. This gives me super wide angle. It's fantastic for capturing, say, a seascape where you want to capture the beach in the foreground, the sea going off into the horizon, cliffs, etc. Or if you're in a dense forest, capturing a lot of detail around you. The other one to consider, which is, for me, something that I use just as much as my wide angle lens, is my 100 to 400 mm zoom lens. This is absolutely brilliant. When you're often in a landscape situation or street photography, or nature photography, you definitely want some telephoto reach. What I propose is thinking carefully about getting a longer telephoto zoom. This gives me incredible reach, and because I'm using a crop sensor, this effectively is a 150 to 600 mm lens, and it's half the weight of the 150 to 600. Gives me fantastic zoom. When looking and scoping out a landscape, quite often there's details in that landscape that you want to pick out. It may be a silhouette of a skyline. It may be the trees silhouetted. It may be that there's a tree or some feature that you want to zoom in within the landscape as a whole. There may be shadows that you want to zoom in on. There may be flowers that you want to. Anyway, I go on a little bit too much here, but you get the point. This is absolutely essential for landscape photography, wildlife photography, nature photography, and also I've started recently shooting aircraft and things like that. So this is a brilliantly adaptable lens. So think, when you get your second lens, think about which one you want to do. Wide angle, which is more common, or zoom, which is slightly less common for landscape photography in particular, but I would highly recommend this. I use these interchangeably all the time for about 50% of the time. Okay, so that's those. The other thing you need to consider for each of my lenses, I do have lens hoods. This just stops the stray light. So when you do get your lenses, get a lens hood. These are absolutely brilliant for cutting out stray light within the environment and for your shots. Okay, let's put this back, and then we'll start to talk about some of the other equipment that you may require. Before I do, one very quick one. I do also have a 32 mm Sigma Prime lens. This goes down to f1.4. This is what I use for street photography. I totally love this. If you do want to do multi-genre style photography, this is a perfect one on a crop sensor because it's effectively almost 50 mm. This is absolutely brilliant for street photography and night light photography. At night, check out some of my other videos. As I've mentioned, there's a lot of street photography ones on there. This lens has primarily been used for those. Absolutely superb. So if you do want to do multi-genre style photography, recommend getting a prime for street photography if that's your thing. So now that we've covered some of the basics in terms of the body and the lenses, let's have a look at some of the additional equipment. One of the things that I strongly recommend, the first filter you get, maybe after you've got your first lens, is a polarizing filter. I have the magnetic versions, which are absolutely brilliant. I'll talk about my other filters in a minute. These are absolutely perfect for quick interchangeability. So let's just get that out. I'll show you how this works very quickly. If you pop off the lens hood, which again is magnetic, you simply just drop that on. Circular polarizing filter to rotate, absolutely perfect for photography. I'm actually going to leave that on there because the sun's starting to come out now. So I'm going to leave that on there and do a few photographs in this location because I'm in a quarry. It's absolutely amazing. So having got that one, where would I go next? If you want to try long exposure photography, say waterfalls, the next filters I would recommend are neutral density. I have two. I have the ND64 and also the ND1000. Absolutely brilliant filters for slowing down, giving you those long exposure shutter speeds. I can achieve shutter speeds in minutes when attaching one or two of these filters. Absolutely stunning to do long exposure and slow down water motion in particular. The next lens that I would consider, I've been using this a little bit for street photography, is the black mist filter. It just creates a subtle softness to the image. I'm going to be using this in landscape photography as well, so keep your eye out for that. I would definitely be recommending this one. Definitely for street photography. I'm going to check it out for landscape photography. I want to see what impact it has, especially on waterfalls. I'm going to make a trip out into the hills soon to capture some waterfalls. What else do we need? Right, battery backups. You definitely need battery backups. This one actually contains, if I can open it, this one actually contains 2 batteries in there, and it acts as a power bank as well. So that is multifunction. That is absolutely brilliant and essential for photography. Cleaning gear. You need cleaning gear. You've got to keep your lenses clean. You've got to keep your filters clean, your camera clean, and an air blower as well. Absolutely brilliant. These are going back in the bag. These aren't going on the floor. The other thing to consider is a remote control. I use the Canon remote control. This works with video. It also works with obviously photography. It has an immediate shutter release, and it also has a 2-second shutter release. So it allows your tripod to stabilize. It allows your camera to just be that little bit more steady when actually taking images. So I use this extensively when on location, especially for long exposures when I know that the camera is settled. There's no pressure on the shutter button. It's all done remotely. And last but no means least, this bag also has a PC pocket at the back. Now, I don't carry a laptop around, that's too heavy for hiking. So what I have is I use this for my iPad. So my camera, the 90D, actually connects directly to my iPad. So when I'm on location, I can actually take and inspect the images on my iPad, because it's a little bit better than the LCD. LCD screens on cameras are a little bit too small for full assessment. You can zoom in and out, I know, but to fully assess an image, something like this is perfect on location. When you've got that time and you've got that space, you can download them. So that's something else that this bag, and that as you become more advanced, you can start to assess your images on that. I hope that you found this useful and some informative tips on how to grow your equipment from beginner through to advanced. If so, please remember to like and subscribe, and remember to check out some of my other videos. Until next time, goodbye.